So real quick, we're going to go over the aspects of what I consider a good bush knife. I have two examples with me today. One is the Mora Classic 2/0 and the other is the Sasha Knives Medium Puko. I chose these two specific knives to show the different ends of the spectrum when buying bushcraft knives. This Mora is an everyman's knife. It costs around $30. Most people can afford that, and Mora makes some knives as cheap as $10. Whereas the Sasha is a $300 knife. The price does not dictate the skill. So if you're just getting into bushcraft and you want to choose a good knife, don't make price be a factor that you're considering. Look instead for functionality and something that you can learn with and grow with. When I started learning wilderness living skills, I started with a $30 knife and still generally stick to knives in that price range. As much as I love my Sasha, most of the time I do reach for a simple Mora knife. So let's go over the specific details of these knives. The Sasha comes with a nice handmade leather sheath with a belt loop. The knife itself is just shy of 8 inches with a 3-inch blade and a 4.5-inch handle. You can see here that according to Morse Kahansky's guidelines, a proper bush knife should be about the width of the user's hand, and this blade is about that for me. This handle is very comfortable and is teardrop shaped for stable grip. The steel is O1 high carbon tool steel. The handle scales are a natural micarta. They can also be gotten in black micarta, white micarta, or desert ironwood. This knife has a full-length tang, which many people prefer for strength and hard use. And before I forget, the spine of this knife is about 3/32 of an inch thick. It is nice and thin and very nimble when using it for carving or slicing tasks. Now on to the Mora knife. It has a very simple plastic sheath with a drain hole on the back. Many people don't like these sheaths. I really do. For me, it's very functional, and I don't necessarily care about the aesthetic of it. It does have Mora Sweden and their coat of arms on the front, along with a plastic belt loop, though many wilderness skills practitioners prefer to wear these knives around their neck, as do I, and I have a length of paracord on here for that purpose. So onto the knife. It has a full-length rat tail tang, comfortable barrel-shaped handle for good, strong grip. It has a 4.25-inch blade of the Swedish equivalent of 1095 high carbon steel. The spine is also about 3/32 of an inch, and it does have a Scandinavian grind. Both of these knives are a very good choice. If I was going to only pick one for an extended period of time, it would be a difficult decision for me. Do not let the price of the knife determine anything for you. Again, it all comes down to personal preference and your ability as the user. Now that knife features are out of the way, we'll go into some basic carving skills. Alright, so the next thing we're going to do is teach basic carving skills. I'm going to show you how to make what I call a tri-stake. It is a variation of the Morse Kahansky tri-stick, using only the notches and techniques that I typically will use. These are a round chamfer, a reduction, a V-notch, a U-notch, a V-notch, a number 7 or L-notch, a square notch, and a stake point. So I'm going to use another piece of willow for this. I just made this one off camera from this end here. So first thing I'm going to do is reduce the size of this to about here. To do that, I'm going to do what's called a beaver chew. The beaver chew is a way to work your way around the stick to break it off clean. So I'm going to start by making small cuts on about the same line going all the way around the stick. Now that I've gone all the way around on one direction, I'm going to flip it and go back from the other side. And then I'm going to clean that up, and you don't have to clean it up, I'm just going to do it to make it look a little bit nicer for the demonstration. So that's pretty decent. So now that I have it reduced, you can just break it pretty simply and cleanly. So now I've got a broken end on each side. So to start, I'm going to round this side. To do that, I'm going to turn the knife towards myself, hold it like this with my thumb out of the way of the edge, and start making simple pull cuts towards me using the muscles in my fingers. This is a very easy and effective way to clean up a broken end of a stick. Generally, this is going to be used for making the top of a tent stake or anything else that you want to have a rounded end on. So you can see I flipped it, and now I'm just going at about a 45-degree angle around to round out the edges so that if this were going to be used as a tent stake, it would be less likely to splinter when hammered into the ground. And we have our round chamfer. I'm going to leave the stake point until the end. So the next notch on our tri-stake is a reduction. This is generally used for making toggles. So I'm going to set the edge of the knife up and the stick on top of it, and with both my thumbs out of the way, I'm going to spin to score around the stick on one clean line. From there, I'm going to make small cuts similar to our beaver chew, and I'm going to go all the way around. Now, since I don't have enough to flip the stick around to work it from the other side, I'm just going to carefully hold the knife with my thumb on the flat. This helps get a lot more control. And then using my left hand for thumb pressure, I'm going to start to make those cleaning cuts from the end of the stick. So now that's pretty good. Now I'm just going to clean it up. Alright, so there we go. We have our reduction. This is generally used for toggles and similar things where you need cord to stay on one spot. I often use it for bow drill bows. So our next notch we're going to do is a U-shaped notch. So for that, I'm going to make a press cut to score it, only on one plane. I'm not going all the way around. And I'm going to go out wide and carve down into it. And then similar as how we were cleaning up from this side, I'm going to hold the knife that same way and remove material from the other side. You can see I'm only making thin shavings. I'm not digging deep. You want these to be pretty clean cuts. And there we have our V notch. The next notch is going to be we have our U notch. The next one is going to be our V. So this one is similar in that we're going to score going across And in that same way, we put it on the stick, put our thumb down, press down with our thumb, and rocked it a little to make our cut. So now, similar to the V, I'm going to make cuts from either side, but I'm going to go a lot closer this time. You can rock the knife to push it in a little if you need. And there we have our V. So you can see here the difference between the U and the V. The U notch is much wider and a lot larger overall, whereas the V notch is pretty small, pretty tight. This is a notch that is often used when carving into a fireboard in a hand drill or a bow drill set. So there's our V notch. The next notch is going to be our L7. This one's pretty simple as well. We're going to put our knife on and score in the same way we have for everything else so far. Now we're going to go back at a shallow angle and carve into it. In this case, our score is what is called a stop cut. So we're going to just do that until we have it fairly deep. So go back and make your shaving cuts and then cut them out. This notch is a very commonly used one for trap triggers, for Paiute and figure 4 deadfalls. And works well for tent stakes and anything else that you may need a deep notch. So there we have it, there's our L7. Next is going to be a square or cabin notch. This one is a little bit harder to carve perfectly flat, so bear with me. So we're going to score 2 spots this time, about an inch apart from each other, and it could be wider if need be. Now we're going to remove material from both sides and make it meet up as a flat on the bottom. So I'm going from one stop cut to the other, removing small chips. Then I'm going to flip it around now that I have enough to use as a handle and do the same thing. Now I want to be careful that I don't break it. It has a little bit of flex right here where I made my L7. So I need to reinforce it while I am making any harder push cuts to avoid breaking my stick. So it's starting to take shape. So once it's to this point, I'll normally use the tip of my knife to make my more clean cuts into it, trying to plane the surface. So that's pretty good. This notch is also used in the figure 4 deadfall or anything where you need to make log construction with. It's just on a much smaller scale. If you ever had Lincoln logs as a kid, that's what that notch is. So now that finishes all the notches on my tri-stake, and I have a bit left. But I'm not going to worry much about that. I'm going to go ahead and show another cutting style, another cutting technique called the rose cut. The rose cut is similar to the beaver chew, except we make the cut go deeper in. So I'm going to do it around here. So go ahead and score all the way around. And then we're going to make deep cuts into that score. We're not trying to remove any chips. We're just going to keep doing this and go deeper and deeper around. And then once we have it pretty much to the center, we'll break it off. And it's called a rose cut because it kind of looks like a flower when you look at the cut from the break. So now I have a round-ish point on the bottom here. I'm going to turn that into my tint stake. There's a lot of ways we can do this, but I'm just going to simply use thumb pressure. So I'm going to go back about 1/4 of an inch from where my previous cut had started at. Let's see if we can see that. About there. And at about a 30-degree angle, I'm going to start making cuts, going all the way around. So now it's a bit longer now. It's a bit of a dull point still no sharpness to it whatsoever. And we're just going to continue to remove material around that axis and point it up. This could be used for anything from the end of your bait stick on a trap to a wooden arrow, top of a bow drill spindle, anything that needs a point carved into it. Now I'm going to just go a little bit more slowly with it to make my finishing cuts. And there we go. I generally like to make these close to the length of the knife that I'm using. In this case, both of these were a little bit short for the Mora. The first one I did carve with the Sasha, and it is about the right length. There's no real reason that I like to make it that size other than portability for if I'm going to be showing this as an example to people I'm teaching knife skills or anything like that. The first one that I made is a little bit rougher because I was doing it just quickly to have an example to show as I went along. But that is pretty much my tri-stake process. I use all of these notches in different ways for different uses around my camps. Alright, so now that I've shown simple carving techniques, I'm going to go back and show a couple different grips that I was using or that you could use in a little bit more detail. So first and foremost is the hammer grip. The edge is lined up with your knuckles and it's very sturdy. You can also have your thumb a little bit further up if you want, but I normally keep it wrapped around like I'm making a fist. Next grip you can use is the chest lever. I don't love this grip, but it works fairly well. It's pretty controlled. You're basically moving your shoulders back and making the muscles in your shoulders and chest do the work. It's good for if you need to carve close to somebody else. Then you have simple thumb pressure. So this can be one thumb, but that's not very helpful for anything. That's not helping with control. You have a little bit weaker grip on the knife if you're doing that. So if you're going to be carving out, just use a hammer grip. But if you're going to use thumb pressure, use both of your thumbs and use it for precise, controlled cuts. You can see that I'm just turning my wrist to make the cut and pushing with my thumbs. Pretty simple. Then the last grip that I generally use, one of my favorite grips for carving is thumb on flat. I don't know if it has a actual name, but I'm putting my thumb on the flat of the blade. See, I'll do it on this side to show maybe. No, I can't. Okay. So anyway, move the camera. Got my thumb on the flat of the blade. This helps me get a lot of control on carving, especially carving towards myself. Which, as a general rule, you may not want to be doing, but for certain things like carving spoons or anything where I'm making very gentle cuts, I'm okay with doing it. So I'm going to round off that break so that I'm not punching yet another hole into the sweater. I'm going to brace the stick against my pec, and with my thumb on the side, I'm going to make controlled cuts towards myself. Right now, I'm just peeling bark as an example. You can do this really with any size blade, but I like to do it best with these blades that are around 4 inches or less. Anything larger, and it can be a little bit more unwieldy, maybe a little bit more dangerous. But if I'm carving like this and I slip and I hit my chest, even if I'm not wearing clothes, all of that control is in my wrist, and I'm not going to get cut. I don't recommend you try that yourself. Don't take off your shirt and slam your knife against your chest. If you get cut, that's not on me. But I've never gotten cut with this technique. Alright, so that is the end of our video today. As a recap, we went over 5 different notch types and 2 ways to finish the end of a stick. We went over different grips you can use for your knife, and we went over basic knife characteristics to look for when selecting a knife for bushcraft or wilderness living skills. Thank you very much for watching. Tune in next time for another video, and have a wonderful day.